With a Steam backlog of over 796 games at the time of recording, clearing 10 of them is just a drop in the ocean. But it should be a very fun drop in the ocean because I'm really excited to finally play these games. Here are the next top 10 games in my Steam backlog. Leading a special task force armed with guns and psychic powers while trying to hunt down traitors among the group sounds pretty interesting, and that's exactly what Lost Dimension has in store. The traitor mechanic is what sets Lost Dimension apart from other strategy RPGs. In order to advance to the next floor of the game's dungeon, you need to sacrifice one of your teammates' lives. The choice is potentially made easier with the knowledge that several of your teammates aren't really on your side, and are actually traitors working for the enemy. Using your psychic powers, you're supposed to read your teammates' minds in order to discover who is a traitor and who is not. I'm not exactly sure what happens if you end up sacrificing someone innocent by mistake, or if that's even possible, but the premise definitely sounds interesting. Once upon a time, there was an internal team at Capcom known as Clover Studio. Made up of many of the same staff that had developed Beautiful Joe, the team was tasked with developing new IPs for Capcom. The studio was short-lived due to their games failing to meet sales expectations from Capcom, and one of the last games they released was an action-adventure game for PS2 called Okami, which eventually received an HD remaster for PS3, PS4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and PC, and that's the version we're looking at here. Okami's gameplay draws inspiration from the Legend of Zelda series, which is what put it on my radar initially. The player controls the sun goddess Amaterasu, incarnated as a white wolf, on her journey to defeat the mythical 8-headed demon Orochi. Along the way, you'll encounter minifigures from Japanese mythology and folklore, all the while exploring a gorgeous, cel-shaded world inspired by Japanese ink wash painting. Tokyo Xanadu X Plus is an action RPG that tells the story of Japanese high school student Ko Tokisaka as he comes into contact with a supernatural realm called the Eclipse and discovers supernatural powers of his own. A contemporary Japanese high school setting combined with supernatural powers. 3 guesses as to how I learned about this game. Yeah, I read somewhere that it was sort of like Persona and it was immediately wishlisted. Anyway, given that it's an action RPG and that the Steam store page boasts 40 plus hours of gameplay, it's different from Persona in many ways. It's developed by Falcom, who are primarily known for the Ys series in the action RPG space, so they definitely have experience making great games in the genre. I'm also looking forward to hearing more great tracks from Falcom's sound team. Indivisible is a unique blend of action RPG and platformer. While exploring, you'll be platforming in 2D, and when you encounter enemies, gameplay shifts to a turn-based battle system, where your attacks are dependent on button combos, sort of like a fighting game. In that regard, it's said to be similar to Valkyrie Profile, which is another game I'd like to play someday. The characters are all hand-drawn and animated, and they look fantastic. Reviews on Steam are hit or miss about the story, but Indivisible seems worth playing for its gameplay and visuals alone. Metroidvania elements, a tense atmosphere, stealth mechanics, and all of this set in a sci-fi space station? Yeah, I'm interested in that. Prey is a first-person shooter with all the aforementioned elements, and developer Arcane built it as a spiritual successor to System Shock. Add that to the list of System Shock's spiritual successors! I have to admit, I'm a little nervous about playing this game. I'm not really one for horror games or movies, and while Prey might not be a horror game, from what I've heard of the soundtrack and seen of the enemies, it seems like it could be pretty intense at times. The setting, story, and gameplay are really intriguing though, so I will press onward one tiny step at a time like the scaredy cat I am. Valkyrie Chronicles 4 features the same gripping tactical gameplay as the first game in the series, but with improved graphics and a new cast of characters. The Steam store page describes the battle system as part overhead turn-based strategy, part real-time third-person shooter, and that's a perfect description of the primary Valkyrie Chronicles gameplay loop. The setting of Valkyrie Chronicles is just as striking as its watercolor painting visuals. It's basically a World War II story, but in a fantasy universe, and with superheroes on the battlefield called Valkyria. I really enjoyed the first game, and I can't wait to go back with this fourth entry in the series. Set in London during the 1918 influenza pandemic, Vampire puts you in control of Dr. Jonathan Reed. Besides trying to heal the influx of sick patients, the doctor has another problem. He's recently been turned into a vampire. Now forced to take lives in order to survive, it's up to the player to decide how he uses his powers, and whose lives he takes. Your decisions will influence your community and London as a whole. As a vampire game, Vampire immediately has my interest. It's an action RPG with strong narrative elements, and choices matter is a big selling point as well. It's sort of interesting that this is the game Don't Nod made after the original Life is Strange. I guess they really wanted to go in a new direction thematically. In any case, Vampire sounds like it will be right up my alley. Just putting this out there, I had to look up how this game is actually pronounced.
Vampire.
I was never into Digimon as a kid. It was Pokemon all the way for me. As an adult, I don't have anything against the franchise. It just isn't something I've ever gotten into. After hearing a lot of positive feedback for the two Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth games on the internet, and enjoying a few tracks from the OST on YouTube, I decided it was time to try these games, and picked up the Complete Edition on Steam. I'm looking forward to seeing a bunch of Digimon designs that are new to me. I only know a few of them from what I've seen in promotional material over the years. The orange lizard one, the cat with green gloves, and the cactus with boxing mitts, or something like that. Yeah, I definitely have a lot to learn about the Digimon themselves, but I'm looking forward to diving into these turn-based JRPGs. You might recall a few entries ago when I referred to myself as a scaredy cat. If I'm nervous about playing Prey, a game that isn't even a horror game, then you can probably guess how apprehensive I am to start Resident Evil, a game that helped pioneer the survival horror genre. Yet, I've ranked this game nearly at the top of this list. That's for a few reasons. While I've enjoyed Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6 in the past, I've yet to experience the less action-focused roots of the series. Resident Evil 4 had some really dread-inducing segments, and I can only imagine what the game that started it all has in store for me. I think I'm equally parts nervous and excited to play Resident Evil HD. I consider it a gap in my video game experience that's been a long time coming. This JRPG originally released for PS3, with a remaster coming to PS4 and Windows several years later. With animated cutscenes produced by the legendary Studio Ghibli, it's no surprise that those look amazing. But the graphics during gameplay also look very good, with cel-shaded visuals that make it look a bit like a Ghibli film translated into the third dimension. Combat mixes both real-time and turn-based elements, and I'm really curious how it feels in practice. As a JRPG, there's plenty to love here, with side quests, great characters, and a compelling story. Ni no Kuni has received numerous accolades since its release, and I think it's about time I gave it a try. Hey, thanks for watching, and welcome to the end of the video. Don't really have anything to say this time, just that I appreciate you watching, whoever and wherever you are. I appreciate it, and I'll catch you in the next video 2 months from now. Bye!